In 1958, a 17-year-old boy changed football forever. Not only did he secure the World Cup for what would become the greatest national team of all time, but he also left a mark on an entire generation, lasting right through to the present day, the famous number 10 shirt. What few people know is that in the 1958 World Cup, the numbers were assigned by drawing lots, and fate decreed that our king would wear the most iconic number in the history of football. In the book, A Magia da Camisa 10 by Andre Ribeiro and Vladir Lemos, two excellent Brazilian journalists, various players are mentioned who wore the number 10 for many years. Examples include Cruyff, Rivellino, Zico, Bobby Charlton, Gullit, Francescoli, Platini, Maradona, Figo, Baggio, Rivaldo, and so on, continuing to modern days with players such as Ronaldinho and Messi. However, there is a noticeable decline in the number of what we'd call classic number 10s, those players known for maintaining possession, ensuring the team circulates the ball with quality, and having the ability to step on the ball and dictate the pace of the match as they please. So what is a number 10 these days? Besides the fact that we can no longer guarantee that the best player on the team will wear the 10, something very unusual in the past. The classic number 10 has effectively turned into that between-the-lines player who operates more in the central channel, is heavily involved in build-up play, but primarily plays just behind the forwards and looks for space wherever it appears. To answer the question of why we no longer see as many number 10s, I decided to analyze the teams in this season's Champions League quarter-finals, team by team, to see who is fulfilling that role in modern football. Arsenal, for example, play in a 4-3-3 with a midfield trio, a system that has become very popular over the last few years and is used by various managers. Their number 10, in quotation marks, would be Ødegaard, the player who operates between the lines, who frequently drops deeper, and who helps the team circulate possession with a bit more finesse. However, he is essentially part of the midfield three, predominantly on the right side, which is somewhat different from what we were used to in the past. Real Madrid, as discussed in a previous video, currently play in a 4-4-2. In their side, the role is taken up by Bellingham, who drifts inside and occupies the central channel. If we look at his profile, he appears to have physical attributes and qualities that were not all that common amongst older style number 10s. He's a player with a lot of physical presence, gets into the penalty area frequently, can play without the ball, and presses the opposition, quite different from what we were once accustomed to. When we look at Paris Saint-Germain, they basically don't have a single player fulfilling this role. The closest would be Dembélé playing as a false 9, given that Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and Manuel Ugarte formed a midfield trio. None of them is particularly close to what we'd call a present-day 10. At Aston Villa, there's a large rotation of players who operate in that position. In the second leg against Club Brugge, for example, McGinn played there, though we know he often plays on the wing, especially for his national side. And sometimes he doesn't even start for this Aston Villa team. That leaves Marco Asensio, who might have more characteristics of a number 10, but we've also seen him regularly on the wing. Then there's Morgan Rogers, who can also play out wide, cutting inside, and sometimes doesn't even get picked for the starting lineup. When we analyze Barcelona, we see a 4-2-3-1 system. That 4-2-3-1 allows for a number 10 in theory. In this case, it's Dani Olmo, who, like Ødegaard, tends to participate in build-up down the flanks. He's spent a lot of time playing out wide, particularly as a traditional winger at Leeds, and he also doesn't necessarily have that hallmark ability to slow the game down and control it entirely, although his passing is indeed excellent. Borussia Dortmund, in my view, have the player who is closest to a proper number 10, also in a 4-2-3-1, Brandt, who plays through the middle and is quite adept at slowing the game, stepping on the ball and circulating it with a bit of measured pace, controlling the match and ensuring his team keeps possession whenever he's on the ball. At Bayern Munich, the person taking on this function is Musiala. He too is a player who spends a lot of time on the wing, especially for the German national team, and has done so at Bayern as well. He's a technically gifted player, yet more inclined towards one-on-one duels, a lot of attacking thrust in the box, rather than the classic number 10 style of threading incisive passes. He's more about agility, pace, and direct play. Finally, we come to Inter Milan, who play a 5-3-2. That system doesn't naturally lend itself to a typical number 10. The closest might be the player who sits slightly deeper behind Thuram and Lautaro Martinez, currently Mkhitaryan, who sometimes drifts left and is given a bit of freedom. However, he is far from a classic number 10, having had his prime at Borussia Dortmund as a true winger. Even at Manchester United, he arrived as a wide player. It's hard to claim he's close to being a classic 10. However, looking at Inter Milan gives us a hint as to why the number 10 has changed. If we check their first choice defensive midfielder, it's Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Many will recall that at Bayer Leverkusen, Hakan was a genuine number 10. He even arrived at AC Milan under that title as a player who would operate in the middle behind the striker or at a push on the left wing cutting inside. Yet at Inter, he's become a holding midfielder. If we look back just a bit further, we'll see Brozovic, who also used to be a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1, further forward. However, with the arrival of Conte, he became the team's main defensive midfielder and one of the best in the world in that position until he moved to Saudi Arabia. If we consider other teams, we find similar stories. At Real Madrid, for instance, in the past would Luka Modric really be classed as a holding midfielder? He's extremely technical, with plenty of ability on the ball, capable of dictating and orchestrating the game. Would Rodrigo, another highly technical player, be playing wide on the right, hugging the touchline and running in behind? At Paris Saint-Germain, would Vitinha truly be a holding midfielder, or is he closer to a number 10, capable of stepping on the ball, turning under pressure and dictating the play? At Aston Villa, there's Tielemans, who is labelled as a number 8. But would he have been an 8 in the old days? He's certainly strong, but when he gets on the ball and starts controlling the game, it's very hard to dispossess him. He also understands how to slow the match down, keep the ball on the ground, and help the team play out from the back. At Barcelona, Pedri is a number 8, but in my view, he's the closest thing to a classic 10 if he were playing in the football of yesteryear. He has tremendous ability on the ball, threads passes with ease, possibly more so than Dani Olmo. He's comfortable receiving under pressure and then calmly setting the tempo for his side. As for Bayern Munich, you might think they don't have that type of player, but Michael Olise, who plays as a right winger, left-footed and extremely talented on the ball, can also receive, turn both ways, and help the team keep possession very efficiently. In an earlier era, would he really have been a right winger? Thus, the number 10 shirt has definitely evolved. Apart from the role itself, which is now often taken up by players with more physical prowess and more of an attacking instinct in the box, we also see other players who, in the past, would have been number 10s performing deeper duties, for instance, Hakan, Pedri or Modric. In all likelihood, Luka Modric would have been a number 10 had he played in the mid-1990s. These are more slight, technically adept players with massive ball control who can run the show effortlessly. That said, this discussion isn't really a thing worldwide. Did you know that in England, there's barely any talk about the disappearance of the number 10? It's the same in Germany. Even in Spain, where they won the World Cup without a recognized number 10, playing with Iniesta and Xavi, both hailed as two central midfielders, plus Xabi Alonso and Busquets, always referred to as deep-lying midfielders. So why is this conversation so prevalent in Brazil? It's quite straightforward. Nobody else has ever had so many number 10s of such high caliber as we've had. Want some examples? The King Pelé, Rivellino, Zico, and, a bit further along, Rivaldo. Then players like Ademir da Guia, Dida, Zizinho, Tostão, Jairzinho, Gerson, Canhotinha de Ouro, Alex, Rai. We could also mention those who weren't necessarily great central number 10s but still bore that Brazilian flair typical of a classic 10, such as Garrincha and Ronaldinho Gaúcho. It's easy to see why European countries aren't fussed about the number 10 shirt. In the Netherlands, for instance, the number 10 isn't especially revered or mystical as it is for us, because the best player in their history wore the number 14, Cruyff, who we Brazilians might view as a number 10. And that sums up why this debate exists and why there's still confusion. So, I'll pose the question to you as well. Has the number 10 changed simply to adapt to modern football, or do these players no longer really exist? Is it a natural process of evolution we need to accept, or have these traditional players disappeared and we're merely trying to fit others into that mold? Leave your comments so we can discuss it.